Thank you for listening to Footnotes, a Fellowship Mosaic podcast. This is a space for us to dig deeper into Scripture, what is happening in our community and culture, and continue the conversations we start on Saturday nights. We are excited to have you join us as we pursue truth, holiness, and redemption together.
Well, hey, welcome back to Footnotes. This is our Mosaic podcast where we catch up on things from Saturday night, sermon stuff that we didn't get to, and other things going on around our congregation. Hi, my name is Nick, and I'm joined with the one and only Collin Jackson.
One and only?
The one and only. You're the only Collin Jackson I know.
I met a guy named Collin the other day at the trampoline park. He was a cool dude.
There is a guy named Nick Rowland who is apparently really intense medical researcher. So he writes all these papers on crazy stuff. So I will get emails going like, hey, did you write this paper?
It's you.
I'm like, no, I did not write that paper. But it sounds really cool, and I wish I had. So to the Nick Rowland out there, who's apparently a brilliant medical researcher, thanks for what you're doing.
I like him, but I like you more.
Oh, thanks.
You went on sabbatical.
I did.
Tell us about it.
It was so good. It's such a sweet privilege that our church lets us do that. So we did 2 weeks at Disney World that were just out of this world. It was so fun. We had a blast. I love all things Disney World. So we had a ton of fun, really sweet play. Weather was perfect. So we were down there for like 12 days, which is a really great extended time to be away. So it was 65 degrees in Orlando, and then we came back to like -5 or whatever it was here.
Yeah.
So that was a rude awakening. And then once I got back, had a week that was just really slow. A lot of sleeping in and a lot of reading and playing Zelda Tears of the Kingdom.
Okay.
With my dog in my lap, which is kind of like the most restful, sweet. I've actually got a little routine because I'm ADHD and I can't sustain one task for a long time.
Okay.
So I will read like 5 pages and then set my book down and play 15 minutes of Zelda.
Yes.
And I'll just go back and forth.
That's
and
good.
It's like the most restful
ever.
So that was really great. And then I did 2 days out at my parents' cabin. Just went out there to pray. Took Richard Foster's Sanctuary of the Soul and just did some work on some prayer time with the Lord. Which is really good. So 2 days at my parents' cabin, and then Cassie and I had kind of like a 2-day date day, just to spend some time together and go see a movie and have some good food. Went to Conifer, which is I guess we're doing promotions of local restaurants in this podcast now. But Conifer's wonderful. It's Cassie's gluten free and everything in the restaurant's gluten free. Awesome. So it's really fun for her to be able to go to a restaurant and just be handed a menu and know everything's safe.
Okay.
So that was really good, really yummy.
Part of the sabbatical process is, one for your soul resting, but as well as kind of sensing where's the Lord leading.
Yeah.
And even for Mosaic, any gleanings there for coming out of it now, things you're hopeful for the future of this church?
Yeah, I know one of the biggest things that the Lord really impressed upon me is my own, I've been the last year just way too much operating out of skills and learned disciplines that I know to do, but not really depending on the Lord. And I've just let my time with Him grow really shallow, really short, and just kind of like just a sense of moving too fast, without spending time just to be with the Lord. And so really, I think He was reminding me of just how crucial and that idea that Jesus gave us in John 15. Apart from Him, we can do nothing. And we have to remain in Him, and that is an ongoing process for our entire lives. So that was personally what He did with me, was kind of that, like, shake me up a little bit and say, Nick, you're not relying on me. You're not making me the source of your energy in your life. And so that was jarring, a little scary to like realize that, but also really good to come back around to that. And then direction for Fellowship Mosaic. Honestly, a lot of it has just been thinking about that life together with the Lord aspect, and how are we doing on that? Are we really rooting down discipleship? And then also, are we reaching the lost? Has something that's been heavy on my mind. I think in especially kind of Bible Belt American Christian culture, people talk a lot about growing a church and getting a church big. And I think, unfortunately, the way that kind of can play out.
Like numerical growth?
Numerical growth, yeah. People get excited about that. And the way that can play out is just swapping people around to the hippest new church. And so, you open a church, you open a congregation, and you do some things right, and suddenly hundreds of people from other churches switch to your church.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I could say about that dynamic that I won't. But we don't want to, and I'm not rejecting people who have come from other churches. In fact, a lot of people have really good reasons, whether it's because they move towns or just where their kids are in phase of life and things like that. And that's all wonderful. I don't want to be the latest trendy church that people come to because it's trending. I want to know we've got thousands of people moving to Northwest Arkansas.
Come on.
And I want to know what is their story, and I want to find people who are not currently walking with the Lord to invite them into our congregation. And I want to, the question I've been asking for me personally is, am I living that out? Before I stand up on a platform and just do a whole lot of railing about how we need to do it, I've been thinking, okay, how am I doing with my neighbors? Yeah. How am I doing with the parents on the sideline at my daughter's soccer game? So that was kind of some of my personal conviction. Is a lot of my sabbatical time was maybe less vision for what needs to happen at Fellowship Mosaic and more vision for what needs to happen with Nick to be a faithful follower. So that's what I walked away with a lot of.
That's so good. I remember hearing a church planter share they planted and grew by 7,000 people for 7 years straight. Or I'm sorry, 1,000 people for 7 years straight, 7,000 in 7 years. And by one standard, you'd look at that and be like, we're crushing it.
Sure.
We're so successful. And another local church said, your expression of the church might be doing incredible, but you're killing the church in the city.
Yeah.
The when we lose sight of joining Jesus in his kingdom in our cities, and that the church being active in and through the people, not just the gathering place. We got a really great gathering place. I'd love to see us in this season follow you into that deeper abiding with Jesus. I think things work out when you do that.
It's the only way forward to be healthy.
I'm glad you're back.
It is good to be back. I missed you a lot and missed our people a lot. So we're in this David series.
Yeah, rise and fall of David.
Yeah, and Collin, you taught last week on this moment in David's life where he's on the run for Saul, and really, like, that's actually a long season in David's life. We picked one snapshot, the moment in the cave, but that's a snapshot out of this period where Saul is hunting David. He's on the run, and so that's a really formative time in David's life. And I know you taught on that one scene, but you've been thinking about that whole season a lot.
Oh my goodness!
So tell me, what are some of the things you've been mulling on?
Have you been to En-Gedi? Have you been to?
I have. Yeah, I have taught at En-Gedi, and it's a really stunning place.
Yeah. So what is, because that was one thing I've never been. I've seen pictures. I was asking Mickey Rapier, our directional leader at Fellowship, because I know he's been. Yeah. What's it like? Even just like getting us into that story for you when you were there. Yeah, help us paint the picture of.
Yeah. So En-Gedi is, first of all, you start off in an area that it's very remote. It's very out of the way.
Okay.
And in many ways, the way it functions in Israel today is it's a park. It's a place that, every time I'm there are school kids on field trips.
Yeah.
And so I say every time, I've been there twice. So the two times I've been there were kids on field trips, and people out hiking, and it's the place that you would go in Israel today for just a beautiful day outside. But there's a trail, and you're kind of going up into the woods, and then there are these bluffs, these rocky cliff sides that have all these holes and caves back up in them, and then this spring that comes down to this just beautiful pool of water. And it really does, like, it's all nestled back, so you kind of go up on this trail up into the woods, and then the trail descends into this little area where the bluff is.
Like an oasis.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's a little oasis, and it is just, so I walk down there, put my feet in the water, wow. and it is absolutely stunning, and it makes sense. Like, you can, the way the little pocket, the ravine works. I'm terrible with like describing geography.
Great.
But like, you can see why it would be a safe haven. And one of the things I talk about there is David in the Psalms. He loves this phrase, "God, you are my rock."
Yeah.
And when I've pictured that, when I've read that in the past, I always pictured, something I would hold in my hand, a little, so I try to like work out
like
that
a
metaphor.
Stone, yeah.
But the word rock, that word in Hebrew, it usually means not a rock you'd hold in your hand. It means like a rocky, cliff or something. Yeah. So the point there is when he says, God, you're my rock, he's saying, you're my shelter. You're my place I go to hide from the storm. You're the place I go to hide from persecution. You are my safety. Yeah. And that's what I get from En-Gedi is in this season, this really turbulent, terrible time in David's life. Mm-hmm. God provided a place of safety.
Yeah. That's good. I haven't been, so that's one of the things I wish I had more time to talk about Saturday was just the beauty and the safe haven, that an oasis is a good word for what David was experiencing amidst such turmoil. So chapter 24 is what we talked about Saturday in services. Saul is seeking David's life, comes into the cave to relieve himself. David doesn't kill him. Good job, David. But fascinating, if you keep reading, I think the title, Rise and Fall of David, is a very good title for this series, because we're seeing in and throughout each moment and even each teaching, but especially throughout the Samuels and the Chronicles and the Kings, David is far from perfect. Man after God's own heart, yes, that's what he's getting right. But there's some cracks in that heart. And so 24, we see David kind of do it right. We talked about Saturday. He still cuts the robe and shows dishonor, but even then is conscience stricken. Yep. If you go to 25, though, it's as if it's not even the same guy. Because what 24 and 25 and chapter 26 do in 1 Samuel is it actually invites us into some of the flaws we're going to see played out throughout the narrative of David. Mm-hmm. And this is all before he's even on the throne. So 24, good job, David. You didn't kill the king. You trusted God. You didn't take the throne through violence. You were humble. And even when you were in the wrong, you confessed. And I think there's a lot of beauty to David's character there that we can learn from. 25 is about this story about Nabal and Abigail. And Nabal is this word, and his name means stupid idiot, which is
also what Nick means.
No, it's
Irish.
not.
No,
That's not true. Don't shame yourself like that. But Nabal, David sends two of his mighty men. They've protected Nabal from some Philistines and gone to bat to continue to do what's right and protected Israel. And Nabal, David sends two messengers saying, hey, we kind of saved you and protected your land so that you can keep enjoying it. Could you help us out? Could we get some resources? Could we get some food? We're kind of out here roughing it. And Mr. Stupid Idiot not so gracefully, says no. Who's this David guy? And why should I care? And again, this is not David in the cave now. This is David in the comfort and seeking out some food. And he goes full Hulk on him, like ready to just rain down. You almost think you're reading about Saul. And David comes and hears back from his messengers, hey, Mr. Stupid Idiot doesn't even know who you are and doesn't really care. And David decides, okay, I'm going to take things into my own hands. And thankfully, this woman named Abigail comes and convinces him otherwise. Still, David chooses mercy, but it's not after being pleaded with by Nabal's wife, Abigail, to not take his life. Yeah. And you're like, wait, this is the same guy in 24 who just didn't take the life of the king. And then you get to 26, and it is verbatim. It almost mirrors exactly the story of David in the cave, where David is now on the run again. Saul did not hold to his word and is out for David again. And there's another opportunity to take his life, and David doesn't take it. And this time doesn't cut a rope. He altogether is like, I've learned that lesson. I'm not doing it. And so it's fascinating because even within the cave, you see this conflicting thing happening within David. And then within 25, we see him actually begin to act out on that conflicting motive of violence and taking things to his own hands. And then 26, we see him back to the posture and the place of, no, I'm not going to commit violence. I'm not going to take the throne through overthrow. And so I think we didn't have time for it, but it invites us into this. What do we do when spiritual leaders don't live within step with the Spirit of God?
Yeah. It's we've had story after story in recent years of these big leaders falling into moral failure. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting. I was inclined early in my adult life when I started hearing these stories to go, what's happened in the church that this happens? And then I started reading church history and realized, this happens.
It's been happening.
It's been happening. And so there's a couple of things that I've walked away with. One, we are all frail, broken people.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the big mistakes we make right now is the degree to which we are making these celebrity type idols out of our leaders.
Yeah.
And holding them up in a way that I think is really unhelpful. A.J. Swoboda, in his book After Doubt, he makes a comment that I think is really helpful. Whatever you do or don't think about Roman Catholic theology on the point, he says, one thing they get right is they don't declare someone a saint until after they've died.
Yes.
And he says, while people are living life, their story is incomplete. And so to lionize these figures that are still living is really unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so we've got to quit making these idol heroes out of humans.
Yes.
Because their fall is so devastating.
Yeah.
So that's one thing is we need to normalize human frailty, and the fact that you're a broken sinner, I'm a broken sinner. That's not the whole of my story. I'm also a forgiven sinner, and I'm becoming every day more conformed to the image of Christ.
Yes.
And so we need to have a sober expectation that our gospel, Jesus is the only hero in the story, and everybody else are these wounded healers trying to help each other grow. Yep. The other thing I would say. We had a text conversation as a team about this the other day when another news story broke along those lines, and I was really sad because the person that we were reading about was somebody I've met and look up to, and these were some of the things that I just shot out to the team. I said, hey, pray for the fallout because this is going to hurt a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of pain and disillusionment. The second thing was keep working your recovery.
Yeah.
One of the lies that I think we can fall into is we can create an us and them, and it's really common. In fact, I felt pretty angry a few years ago when there was a lot of media coverage about one of these fallen leaders, not because what the fallen leader did was good, it was absolutely horrible, but the way the coverage went was it was kind of profiling what a spectacularly broken person this one leader was.
Yes.
And you got the impression listening to some of the coverage like, oh, that leader is different from the rest of us. How could he be so whatever, fill in the blank? And I think actually that kind of thinking is what leads to the catastrophic fall.
Yes.
The idea that, other people fall into these things. I'm not going to do that. No. But I think a much more sober-minded approach is to go, every single one of us has within us the sinful inclinations to do the most horrific things. And so I have to maintain this daily repentance. We're Celebrate Recovery fans around here, so in my recovery language, like I have to keep working my recovery every day.
Yes.
And that means we actually deal with sin quickly and early. So when the temptation is whenever I recognize a weakness, a crack in my character, a sin struggle, oh man, I got to hide that from people. Otherwise they'll kick me out. No, actually we need to be a place where people expose their sin. Yeah. They're met with grace and recovery and healing. And when you deal with it early, we prevent it from getting to that place where the damage multiplies exponentially. Yeah. And I just said, hey, I said to the team, I commit to stay accountable. And so I've got people in my life that I share with regularly, and that's, I've got accountability software on the devices I use. In fact, I had a funny one the other day that my daughter was shopping for some women's clothing, athletic wear. And so I got a funny text from my accountability friend. I was like, Nick, are you looking at like women's athletic clothes? I was like, nope, sorry, that's not me. My daughter's shopping for track season. We're good here. But like, I want that kind of, accountability. I want people to have lenses into my life to be able to talk about those things.
I love, because everything that's happening in David's story, it's happening in community. Mighty men, just completely out of left field, bad theology, and he's working through it with them. Abigail comes in and calls him on his stuff, and he turns, he relents. That every single one of these is done, one in community, and then I think there's this thing which we just do with people. One, we demonize them.
Yep.
It dehumanizes them, actually. It makes them less human and the evil, and doesn't even honor the image of God within them, or we deify them and think they're worthy of the worship and praise in which there's only one king who is. And so I think even as we continue in David's story throughout the series, holding that balance between we're going to see him do really, I mean, we haven't even gotten to where he's on the throne yet. And he brings in the Ark of the Covenant, and there's worship, and there's this beautiful spirit within him. And he's going to do some really heinous, like just disgusting things. And to be able to hold both within the framework of course, this is a broken man in a broken world, which there's a greater king coming to redeem.
Yep. And so I think that's the posture we want to have as a church, is to understand, that we are all on that path. And, even I, in a lot of ways, I love the metaphor. I hear people say the church is a hospital.
Yeah.
The thing, I like that from the one sense that it's a place to get healed, but there is a danger in that metaphor, because in a hospital, there's doctors who are apparently the experts who are helping all the sick people heal. And I think we just have to remind ourselves, yes, the church is a hospital. The only doctor is Jesus.
Yes. There's a great physician.
Yes.
And a spirit that's there to counsel.
And everyone,
and it's not us.
whatever role you're serving in the church, you are yourself someone in healing. And so that's important for, I think, all of us to remember, parents to remember as they parent their kids, teachers and people serving in every area of our community. Like, we are all wounded healers.
Yes.
We're all going to make mistakes. Let's be honest about that. Let's be humble about that. Let's bring it to the Lord, because one of the things you see in David, like you pointed out, is he grew from the cave incident to the across the valley incident. He grew in his maturity by responding, I think, to what the Lord was doing in his life.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, it's been a joy, Collin. Thanks for bringing your wisdom, and you all, thanks for listening to Footnotes. We'll see you soon.